Christmas Eve sparkled with festive lights, the air alive with the joyful cacophony of carols and laughter. Yet, for Liam Bennett, the young CEO, the city's vibrant energy felt utterly alien as he sat alone on a park bench. His tailored wool coat and immaculately polished shoes undeniably spoke of success, his posture exuding the authority of his position. Yet, beneath this polished exterior, a profound, aching emptiness clung to him, untouched by any luxury. Amidst the hurried footsteps of shoppers and the steaming warmth of hot cocoa cups, Liam watched the city exhale visible sighs of winter. Months prior, he had deliberately spurned his family's opulent holiday gathering, yearning for nothing more than silence, a reprieve from the hollow pleasantries and forced smiles that invariably accompanied his wealth. He had sought peace, but what he found instead was a chosen solitude that felt like a cruel, unending sentence. He closed his eyes, letting the distant hum of the world wash over him, a world that carried on effortlessly, seemingly without him. Another Christmas, he silently concluded, destined to pass by, as meaningless as all the others had been. Then, through the gentle swirl of descending snowflakes, a whisper of soft footsteps reached him, impossibly tiny against the cold concrete. His eyes fluttered open. Standing directly before him was a little girl, no older than 3. Her golden curls peeking from beneath a well-loved red coat. Her bright blue eyes shining with a hope so potent it seemed almost out of place in this cynical world. In her small hand, she clutched a slightly crumpled paper bag, held with the reverence one might reserve for a priceless treasure. He began to speak, but she was quicker, her voice a clear, earnest chime that sliced through Liam's emotional numbness like a bell. "Sir," she asked, "do you want to have Christmas Eve dinner with me and my mommy?" The question was utterly disarming in its pure innocence, an unexpected, heartfelt offer where he had anticipated absolutely nothing. Liam blinked, utterly stunned. Before a coherent reply could even form on his lips, her small hand reached out and gently, yet with surprising resolve, took his. She tugged. It all unfolded with such startling swiftness that he had no chance to resist. What impulse, what forgotten part of him, allowed this tiny stranger to pull him to his feet as effortlessly as a child might drag a beloved guest home for Christmas dinner? He simply didn't know. Yet, there he stood, the crisp winter air still biting at his cheeks, the fresh snow dusting his suit trousers. And inexplicably, he felt a warmth he hadn't experienced in months. Without a word, they began to walk, her small coat occasionally brushing against his leg, her tiny hand nestled securely in his. Along the bustling avenue, passers-by cast curious glances at the unlikely pair, an incongruous tableau of immense wealth and pure innocence. Some offered soft smiles, others exchanged hushed whispers. But with every glowing storefront and every perfectly manicured, lit-up tree they passed, Liam's inner world began to subtly reorient itself, realized with a startling clarity that this simple act, a child offering genuine companionship to a lonely man, felt more profoundly like a gift than any opulent present he had ever received. They turned onto a quieter side street, a cozy lane lined with modest apartment buildings, their windows radiating soft, welcoming yellow light behind drawn curtains. It was a world away from the sprawling grand mansions Liam typically inhabited, yet in that moment, it felt more like home than any place he had ever known. He started to glance down, a rational thought forming, to remind her of the strangeness of the situation, of him being a stranger. But before he could speak, She looked up, offered him a radiant smile, and simply squeezed his hand. Her small hand tightened, a silent confirmation of the grand adventure they were embarking upon. Around them, the city's boisterous sounds began to recede, and time itself seemed to slow, leaving only the soft crunch of their footsteps on the snow-dusted pavement. The little girl, Sophie, eventually halted before a humble brick building, adorned simply with a single festive wreath and a delicate string of twinkling lights. "Right here, sir," she declared, hopping with excitement. "This is where we live." Before Sophie could even raise her hand to knock, the door swung open. Framed in the warm glow of the interior stood a woman, golden hair braided loosely over one shoulder, her kind blue eyes carrying a trace of weariness. She clutched a small bag of groceries, and for a fleeting heartbeat, her gaze swept over Liam, a complex mix of surprise, caution, and quiet gratitude flickering in her expression. "Mommy," Sophie announced proudly, "this is the man who's coming to eat Christmas dinner with us." The woman's eyes, now softer, held Liam's for a moment before she simply stepped aside. "Come in," she said, her voice gentle as she held the door wide. Liam hesitated for a breath, then followed, pulling the door shut behind him. Inside, the small apartment was instantly inviting, filled with the comforting aroma of roast chicken and warm, freshly baked bread. A modest table, set with mismatched yet charming dishes, held a single flickering candle at its heart. Its soft light danced, casting cozy shadows across the walls adorned with Sophie's vibrant crayon drawings. Sophie, brimming with anticipation, darted to the table, clambered onto a chair, and patted the seat directly across from her. She looked up at Liam, her bright eyes now serious, and his breath caught in his throat. Unsure what to say, yet unable to look away, he found himself sinking into the offered chair, his hands resting on his knees. Quietly, the woman, Emma, moved about, placing a plate heaped with chicken and vegetables before him, before seating herself beside her daughter. A long, comfortable silence settled over them, broken only by the soft glow of the candle. Then, Sophie's voice, a gentle whisper, filled the air. "Merry Christmas, sir." Emma offered him a soft, genuine smile, utterly unlike the practiced politeness he was accustomed to receiving. "Merry Christmas," Liam heard himself respond, his voice unexpectedly husky with emotions he had long buried. Slowly, thoughtfully, the three of them ate, sharing not just food, but warmth, and the quiet comfort of companionship. Outside, the snow continued its silent descent, but inside, gathered around that small candlelit table, Liam understood, for the first time, the true essence of Christmas. It wasn't about lavish parties or the stifling expectations of his wealthy family. It was about connection, about being truly seen, and about finding a sense of belonging. In that moment, his world, which had felt so vast and empty just hours before, was miraculously, wonderfully full again. A brief, pregnant silence hung between them. Then Liam, struggling for the right words, finally managed, I hope it's not too much trouble." The woman's gaze, though still carrying a touch of maternal caution, held no fear. She simply stepped aside. "Come in," she invited, and the rich scent of rosemary and roast chicken enveloped him. The apartment was modest, its living room and kitchen sharing a single open space. A small table by the window held two mismatched plastic plates, a chipped bowl brimming with vegetables, and a single candle tilting slightly in its holder. On the floor nearby, a tiny artificial Christmas tree glowed softly, adorned with handmade ornaments and stars colored with crayons. The woman returned to the counter, slicing chicken with practiced, quiet efficiency. No questions, no hesitation. Just a third plate, placed gently on the table. Sophie, meanwhile, had already hopped into a chair, her small feet swinging cheerfully beneath her. "Mommy makes the best chicken ever," she declared. The woman glanced up, offering a small, genuine smile. "It's not much," she said softly, "but you're welcome." Liam hesitated. He wasn't accustomed to eating with strangers nor to accepting casual kindness. Yet something in her voice, so unguarded and warm, made refusal utterly impossible. He sat. She served him without fuss. The food, simple as it was warm, real, and somehow it filled a hunger far deeper than that of his stomach. They ate in a comfortable, near silence, punctuated only by Sophie's bright giggles and her enchanting tales of an imaginary snowman friend named Sir Sprinkle. Liam found himself smiling, his shoulders slowly relaxing. For once, he wasn't calculating or defending or striving to prove anything. Anna, he would later learn was her name, caught him watching Sophie and offered, "She always likes the candle, even if it's just us. Says it makes dinner special." Liam's gaze drifted to the candle's gentle glow, casting soft, dancing shadows. It stirred a memory of holiday dinners from his childhood, tables laden with food, yet silent, cold, formal meals of silver and crystal, devoid of laughter. Anna quietly, "Sir." Emma offered him a soft, genuine smile, utterly unlike the practiced politeness he was accustomed to receiving. "Merry Christmas," Liam heard himself respond, his voice unexpectedly husky with emotions he had long buried. Slowly, thoughtfully, the three of them ate, sharing not just food, but warmth and the quiet comfort of companionship. Outside, the snow continued its silent descent, but inside, gathered around that small candlelit table, Liam understood, for the first time, the true essence of Christmas. It wasn't about lavish parties or the stifling expectations of his wealthy family. It was about connection, about being truly seen, and about finding a sense of belonging. In that moment, his world, which had felt so vast and empty just hours before, was miraculously, wonderfully full again. A brief, pregnant silence hung between them. Then Liam, struggling for the right words, finally managed, I hope it's not too much trouble." The woman's gaze, though still carrying a touch of maternal caution, held no fear. She simply stepped aside. "Come in," she invited, and the rich scent of rosemary and roast chicken enveloped him. The apartment was modest, its living room and kitchen sharing a single open space. A small table by the window held two mismatched plastic plates, a chipped bowl brimming with vegetables, and a single candle tilting slightly in its holder. On the floor nearby, a tiny artificial Christmas tree glowed softly, adorned with handmade ornaments and stars colored with crayons. The woman returned to the counter, slicing chicken with practiced, quiet efficiency. No questions, no hesitation, just a third plate, placed gently on the table. Sophie, meanwhile, had already hopped into a chair, her small feet swinging cheerfully beneath her. "Mommy makes the best chicken ever," she declared. The woman glanced up, offering a small, genuine smile. "It's not much," she said softly, "but you're welcome." Liam hesitated. He wasn't accustomed to eating with strangers, nor to accepting casual kindness. Yet something in her voice, so unguarded and warm, made refusal utterly impossible. He sat. She served him without fuss. The food, simple as it was warm, real. And somehow, It filled a hunger far deeper than that of his stomach. They ate in a comfortable near silence, punctuated only by Sophie's bright giggles and her enchanting tales of an imaginary snowman friend named Sir Sprinkle. Liam found himself smiling, his shoulders slowly relaxing. For once, he wasn't calculating or defending or striving to prove anything. Anna, he would later learn was her name, caught him watching Sophie and offered, "She always likes the candle, even if it's just us. Says it makes dinner special." Liam's gaze drifted to the candle's gentle glow, casting soft, dancing shadows. It stirred a memory of holiday dinners from his childhood, tables laden with food, yet silent, cold, formal meals of silver and crystal, devoid of laughter. Anna quietly refilled his plate. When he began to protest, she simply waved him off. "You look like someone who hasn't had a proper meal in a while," she said kindly. Liam said nothing. She was right, but not in the way she thought. For the first time in years, he realized it wasn't food he had been truly hungry for. It was this: a small table, a warm plate, and two people who asked for nothing in return. As he sat in that unassuming kitchen, a man of wealth and influence amidst crayon drawings and paper stars, Liam felt something within him finally settle, something that had long drifted, unsure of its place. And when Sophie leaned against her mother, her eyes sleepy, and offered him a quiet smile, as if he had always belonged at that very table, an unfamiliar feeling bloomed in Liam's chest. Hope. After dinner, the dishes were cleared with quiet collaboration. Liam offered to help, but Anna only smiled gently, shaking her head. "You're the guest tonight," she insisted, carefully stacking the plates in the tiny sink. Sophie had drifted off to sleep on the couch, curled beneath a fleece blanket, her cheeks still flushed from excitement and the remnants of cake. The apartment, now even quieter, felt smaller, yet infinitely cozier. Outside the window, snowflakes drifted lazily downwards. The snowflakes continued their lazy descent, painting the city in hushed white. Liam settled back into the chair, his suit jacket folded neatly over its back, his hands resting idly on the table before him. He didn't want to leave, not because he felt any obligation, but because something in this humble apartment made departure surprisingly difficult. Anna finished rinsing the last plate, dried her hands, and rejoined him. She poured 2 mugs of tea, a simple, overly floral blend, yet Liam welcomed its warmth. "She's a good kid," he said softly, nodding towards the sleeping Sophie. "She's everything," Anna replied, her voice now a hushed whisper. A comfortable silence settled between them. Then Liam asked, "How long have you been on your own?" Anna looked down, tracing the rim of her mug with a finger. "Since I was 21. Liam waited. "I was in college," she continued, her voice gaining a quiet resolve. "Studying education, wanted to teach literature, maybe run a classroom with paper stars on the ceiling. I met someone older, charming, said all the right things, and I believed him." He heard the unspoken narrative in her tone. Believed him, got pregnant, was left behind. "My parents weren't thrilled," she continued. "They said I was throwing my life away. When I said I was keeping the baby, they said they couldn't support my decision. I moved out 2 days later." She took a sip of tea, her gaze fixed on nothing in particular. "I waited for him to come back. He never did." "You raised her on your own?" Liam asked. Anna nodded. "I've waitressed, cleaned houses, answered phones, whatever pays the bills. But I've never regretted Sophie." There was no bitterness in her voice, no anger, just the tired honesty and quiet resilience of someone who had no choice but to persevere. Liam stared at her, absorbing her story. It was profoundly unlike his own, yet somehow it resonated deeply. "Do you ever get angry?" he asked, surprising himself with the softness of his voice. "At life? At them?" Anna met his gaze. "Of course," she admitted. "But I learned something early on. Anger eats more than it feeds. It doesn't fix what's broken." Then, with the faintest of smiles, she added, "There's no point blaming the weather. You just find a better coat." Liam let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Then he spoke, his own voice now quieter, more vulnerable. "My family's rich. Like private jets, gala dinners, legacy, neon buildings rich. But my mother hasn't hugged me since I was 10. My father sees me as a failure because I didn't take over his empire. I started my own company when I was 18 and didn't speak to them for 3 years. Anna didn't respond immediately. She listened, truly listened. And when he finished, she reached across the small table and gently placed her hand over his. "Maybe they love you," she said, her voice soft. "They just never learned how to show it." Liam's eyes searched hers. There was no pity in them, only warmth and a quiet understanding that unwound something deep inside him. He nodded once, a subtle acknowledgement. For years he had hidden that wound beneath layers of success and control. Now, here it was, exposed and soothed, not with solutions, but with pure compassion. In a tiny kitchen lit by the last flickers of a candle, Liam felt his world shift once more. Not a grand seismic change, but a gentle reordering. It wasn't a grand sweeping shift, but a subtle reordering born from a woman's calm voice, a simple cup of tea, and a hand that gently conveyed, "You are not alone." And somehow, for Liam, that was more than enough. The days that followed settled into a rhythm of quiet, slower moments, surprisingly warm despite the biting winter air. Liam found himself stopping by more often, not out of obligation, and certainly not out of mere curiosity anymore. That night, over tea and candlelight, something profound had shifted within him, and now, the small apartment with its mismatched plates and paper Christmas tree felt like the only place in the city where he could truly breathe. Sometimes he brought small tokens, a box of pastries from a downtown bakery, a children's book he thought Sophie might enjoy. One afternoon, noticing the kitchen light flickering, he returned the next day with a new bulb and a step stool, insisting on fixing it himself. Anna always thanked him, and he always waved it off. "I'm not doing this to be polite," he explained once after helping her carry a heavy box of laundry up the stairs. "I'm doing this because I want to." Anna smiled, her eyes softening in response. Their conversations grew longer, easier. Sometimes they would talk while Sophie played nearby, constructing towering castles from cereal boxes or drawing comical crayon portraits of Liam with an exaggerated nose. Other times, Liam would help Sophie with her puzzles while Anna prepared dinner, and the three of them would eat together, as if it had always been this way. One late afternoon, as heavy snow began to fall, Liam called ahead, saying he'd stop by just to bring a few things he thought Sophie might like. He arrived at their door with a small paper bag and a familiar warm glint in his eyes. Anna opened the door, surprised. "You're going to catch a cold walking around in this weather," she chided gently. Liam simply smiled. Worth it. He stepped inside, carefully retrieved something wrapped in tissue paper from the bag, and handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked, her fingers slowly unwrapping the soft fabric. It was a scarf, a cream-colored knit with delicate stitching, thick, warm, elegant, and clearly hand-chosen. She froze. "This looks like a..." She trailed off, her voice catching. Liam nodded. You mentioned it once when you were folding clothes. Said you lost one just like it on the subway a few years ago. You looked sad for a second, then laughed and said, "It was silly to miss a scarf." Anna stared at the scarf, then at him, her throat tightening. "You remembered that?" she whispered. He didn't look away. "I don't remember much these days. Most people talk and I forget what they said 2 minutes later. But I remembered that." He stepped closer, his voice softening further. "You're the first person I've wanted to remember." Anna blinked quickly, her hands tightening slightly around the scarf. She opened her mouth, but no words came. She only nodded slowly, as if trying to keep everything inside from spilling out. It wasn't a grand declaration, nor a dramatic scene, but simply a man standing in a small hallway, offering something quietly precious. A scarf, a memory, a message unspoken, yet profoundly heard. After that, the rhythm of their little triangle became more natural. Liam would visit after work, sometimes bringing food, sometimes just to read with Sophie. One evening, he even showed up with ingredients, insisting on cooking. His pasta sauce was, at best, mediocre, but Sophie clapped for him as if he were a master chef. Anna sat at the table, watching him fumble in the kitchen, an expression halfway between amusement and something much softer playing on her face. She never uttered the words, "I'm falling for you." He never said them either. But it was there, in the way her gaze instinctively lifted every time the door opened, already anticipating his arrival. It was in the way he lingered longer with each visit, never in a rush to return to his solitary high-rise. It was in Sophie's affectionate naming of him as our Liam when she spoke to her stuffed animals. And then there was the scarf, folded neatly by the door, worn every time Anna stepped out. A small detail, a silent signal. They were becoming something together, not through grand gestures or sweeping romance, but through small, quiet choices. The scarf, the fixed light bulb, the extra plate at the table. Love, in its truest form, was arriving gently and settling in. 3 days had passed since Christmas, yet the festive spirit stubbornly lingered. Some apartment windows still glowed with holiday lights, and a few storefronts hadn't yet swapped their displays for New Year's banners. In a modest fourth-floor apartment, the little plastic tree continued to blink faithfully in the corner, holding on to the last vestiges of the holiday. That evening, after a quiet dinner, Sophie had fallen asleep on the couch beside her mother, her arms curled around a stuffed snowman. Anna and Liam remained at the kitchen table, a single candle flickering between them, its light casting long, dancing shadows on the chipped wood. Anna silently traced the rim of her mug. Then, almost to herself, she murmured, "Christmas never really felt like it was mine." Liam looked up, his full attention on her. "When I was a kid, we didn't have much," she explained. "No real tree, just a string of half-lit lights taped to the window. My mom would cut out a picture of a Christmas tree from a magazine and tape it to the wall. One year, we even wrapped tinsel around a broom and called it our Christmas stick." She gave a small, melancholic laugh. "I tried to believe it was enough." She glanced over at Sophie, sleeping peacefully, her voice growing quieter. "After I got pregnant, I spent her first Christmas alone, just the two of us in a rented room with no heat. I held her all night, trying to hum carols and pretend it was magical. I didn't have money for a single gift." Liam's chest tightened. "I've done what I can," Anna continued. "Each year I try to make it a little better. I found that little tree at a thrift store. It's missing a leg, so I tape it to the wall. Sophie doesn't know. To her, it's enough." She paused. "But I know what's missing." Liam's gaze drifted toward the small plastic tree blinking faithfully in the corner. Paper ornaments, crayon drawings, a bent star at the top. It was undeniably full of love, but it wasn't whole. "She's never had a real one?" he asked. Anna shook her head. "Not once." That night, after Anna had finally dozed off beside her daughter, Liam quietly slipped out into the snow. The next morning, as always, Sophie was the first to stir. She padded towards the door, eager to see if more snow had fallen during the night. And then, her delighted scream ripped through the quiet apartment. "Mommy, come quick! Mommy!" Anna rushed out, startled, only to freeze at the doorway. There, just outside, stood a small pine tree, fresh, dusted with snow, its branches gracefully strung with white lights and adorned with delicate silver bells. A soft red scarf was tied around its base like a comforting blanket, and at its very top, a handmade gold paper star leaned ever so slightly. Beneath its branches lay 3 neatly wrapped gifts, in simple brown paper tied with festive red string. Sophie danced in ecstatic circles. "He came! Mommy, Santa really came!" Anna crouched down, her eyes brimming with tears, as she reached for a small envelope taped to one of the boxes. In familiar handwriting, it read, "For Sophie, from your secret Santa." She didn't need to ask. She already knew. She looked down the hallway, half expecting Liam to be standing there with that casual, quiet smile. But there was only silence, the fresh scent of pine and the soft chime of bells swaying gently in the morning breeze. Anna touched the tree, her fingers delicately brushing its cold, green needles. For years, she had tried to conjure magic out of nothing, pretending she wasn't watching life through a window she couldn't open. But now, someone had opened it for her. Inside, the old plastic tree still blinked in the corner, but it was no longer the center of her world. Outside, a man had given her child what she had never had, not through extravagance, but through kindness, thoughtful presence, a silent promise fulfilled. And for the first time in her life, Anna felt Christmas truly arrive. By March, the city had begun to shed most of its winter coat. The snow had melted into slush, and the air carried the subtle, hopeful promise of spring. In a modest apartment adorned with handmade decorations and paper butterflies taped to the windows, a certain little girl was meticulously counting down the days to something she had never truly experienced before: her very first birthday party. Sophie was turning 4. To most, it might seem like a small milestone, but for Anna, it was everything. It was the first year she could afford a real cake. The first year Sophie had made friends at the neighborhood daycare. The first year her daughter would get to wear a princess dress, not borrowed, but chosen specifically for her. And for Sophie, the biggest excitement of all revolved around one name she repeated with boundless glee. "Mr. Liam!" Liam had promised. "I'll be the first one at your door," he had told Sophie, sealing the vow with a pinky swear. 8 o'clock sharp, with a surprise. Anna had watched him make that promise, her heart full, yet tinged with the familiar weariness of quiet fear, the fear of being left behind again. He was good to them, consistently, thoughtfully good, but that old wound still lingered. 2 days before the party, Liam's phone rang during a board meeting. It was Singapore, a high-stakes merger. The opposing CEO had changed schedules at the last minute. He would only meet in person and, crucially, only on Sophie's birthday. Liam felt the blood drain from his face. He stood up, without a word, and walked straight out of the room. That night, he called Anna. "I might not make it back in time," he said, his voice low. "The meeting's the same morning. I'm trying to move things, but—" Anna didn't interrupt. She listened, then replied gently, "You've already done so much." But then, softer still, "It's just, she sees you as family now, Liam. This birthday, she's not waiting for toys. She's waiting for you. Liam sat in silence, long after the call ended, his heart heavy, torn between duty and desire. March 17th, Sophie's birthday. Back in New York, Anna had woken early, the apartment already smelling of sugar and strawberry frosting. Balloons clung to the walls, and Sophie twirled in her lavender dress, her hair clipped back with glittering pins. "Is he coming soon?" she asked for the third time in an hour. Anna knelt, adjusting the hem of her daughter's dress. "He said he'd try." Sophie tilted her head. "But he promised." Anna didn't respond. Her eyes stung, and she turned away to hide it. Meanwhile, across the world, Liam sat alone in a luxury hotel suite in Singapore. He had finished the meeting earlier than expected. Everything had gone well. The deal was secured. Yet he felt nothing close to satisfaction. On the table in front of him sat a small velvet box. Inside, a delicate silver bracelet was engraved with tiny, cursive letters. "Sophie and Mommy, my home forever." He stared at it for a long moment, then walked to the window. The city stretched beneath him, glowing with possibility, but all he could think about was a 4-year-old girl in a lavender dress, waiting by a door. His chest tightened. "What am I doing here?" he murmured, "when everything I want is somewhere else?" Without hesitation, he picked up his phone, canceled his remaining meetings, and called his assistant. "Rebook my flight," he commanded. "I'm going home." Hours later, the apartment was buzzing with kids and noise. Paper crowns and frosting-smeared cheeks filled the room. Anna kept glancing at the clock, her smile slowly fading. It was nearly evening when the doorbell finally rang. Anna opened it to find Liam standing there, wind-blown, out of breath, and holding the velvet box in his hand. Sophie spotted him from across the room and screamed with joy. "You came!" she shouted, launching herself into his arms. "I promised," he whispered, hugging her tightly. Anna watched them from the doorway, her eyes glistening. Liam looked at her and smiled, quietly, then placed the box in her hand. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Liam leaned close, his voice gentle. "I missed the cake, but I made it to what matters." And just like that, the day became perfect. Not because of the cake, or the gifts, or the party, but because a promise had been kept, and two hearts that had never truly believed in constancy finally did. The sun had begun its slow descent by the time Liam reached the familiar doorstep. He stood there for a moment, staring at the door he had come to know so well. In his hand was a small gift box wrapped simply with a navy blue ribbon. He hadn't called ahead, nor sent a message. Something within him craved this moment to be unscripted, real. Not scheduled, not arranged, just him arriving because he genuinely wanted to be there. He took a deep breath and knocked softly. Inside the apartment, Sophie was sitting cross-legged on the living room rug, her toy kitchen set spread around her in cheerful chaos. She looked up at the sound of the knock, froze for a beat, then shrieked with pure joy. "Mommy, it's him! It's Liam!" She bolted to the door, just as Anna stepped into the hallway, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. Anna's eyes widened as the door opened, revealing Liam standing there, his hair wind-tussled, a quiet smile on his face. "Uncle Liam's back!" Sophie yelled, running back into the apartment. "Mommy, the table has 3 chairs again. I can cut the cake now." Anna's expression softened, touched by surprise and something much deeper. Liam stepped inside, removed his coat, and looked down for a moment. Then he placed the gift box gently on the small kitchen table. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice low but steady, "for nearly missing it, for not always knowing where I belong." He looked up, and met her eyes. "But if there's still space here, I'd like to sit at this table again and not miss another birthday." Anna didn't speak right away. The room was filled with the soft hum of the heater, the gentle clink of Sophie's plastic teacups. The scent of leftover frosting lingered in the air. Then quietly, Anna stepped forward. Her eyes glistened, but she smiled, a soft, sure, steady smile. "There's always space for you here," she said. "Your seat's never been taken." That evening, the three of them sat down at the table. No grand cake ceremony, no party hats, just a warm dinner Anna had reheated and a profound sense of peace that wrapped around them like a worn, beloved blanket. Sophie chattered nonstop about her day, about her friends, about the crown that kept falling off her head during the song. Liam listened, laughing softly, refilling her juice as if it were the most important job in the world. Anna watched them both, her heart fuller than she could express. After dinner, as Sophie dozed off, nestled against Liam's shoulder on the couch, Anna brought him a cup of tea. They sat in the quiet, words no longer necessary. Liam looked at the little girl nestled against him, then at Anna, who was watching her daughter with a calm, contented gaze. He thought of all the dinners he had skipped in high-rise, restaurants, the holidays spent with strangers in suits, the deals that had consumed his time. And then he looked at this moment, soft, real, quiet, and something clicked inside him. This was home, not because he owned it, not because he had earned it, but because he was wanted here. Because two people, one who understood nothing beyond the joy of cake and hugs, and one who had been quietly carrying the weight of the world, had let him in. He didn't need permission. He didn't need to prove anything anymore. This was his seat, and the table was no longer empty. 1 year later, everything felt different. Not because Liam Bennett had stepped back from the boardroom, or because his company had shattered records. Not because Anna had begun teaching music part-time at the local community center. Not even because Sophie now darted through their rooms like a living spark. It was simply because they were, finally, together. After months of shared meals, bedtime stories, quiet walks through the park, and noisy pancake mornings, Liam, Anna, and Sophie moved in together. Not into a sprawling penthouse, but into a cozy, sunlit apartment with creaky floors and windows that spilled golden afternoon light. In the corner, a tall Christmas tree stood proudly, decorated in gold and white, with crooked paper stars made by Sophie dangling charmingly near the bottom. Liam often stood before it, coffee in hand, Sophie perched on his hip as she added yet another handmade ornament. He had never loved a tree more. Days before Christmas Eve, Liam did something unexpected. He invited Anna and Sophie to dinner with his parents. The first such invitation in over a decade. Anna looked unsure. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "I want them to meet the people who made me whole," he said firmly. They went. The Bennett home remained grand, with its cold marble, towering ceilings, and long silences. But this time, something had subtly changed. Liam's mother greeted Anna not with words, but with a soft pour of tea and a quiet nod. His father, usually reserved, placed a small silver tin in front of Sophie. Inside were soft caramel candies. Her eyes lit up. "My favorite." Liam caught the slight curve of his father's lips, not quite a smile, but something close. No apologies, no grand reconciliations, just small gestures, enough. When they left, hearts felt lighter, and Liam felt something loosen inside him. Then came Christmas Eve. The apartment filled with the comforting scent of cinnamon and roasted vegetables. Snow drifted lazily outside. Inside, lights twinkled, laughter echoed, and the world felt utterly full. They invited neighbors, single moms, quiet retirees, the kind widower next door who always fed the birds. It was not a lavish affair, but it was warm, alive, and brimming with genuine joy. Sophie wore a glittery green dress, her cheeks rosy, darting between guests like a tiny, joyful star. Liam watched Anna from across the room, admiring her red dress, her easy smile, the way she moved as if joy were her natural element. He reached into his pocket, his fingers touching the velvet box tucked inside. Later, as the music softened and the laughter faded to murmurs, Liam stood and took Anna's hand. He led her to the middle of the room, directly beneath the twinkling Christmas tree. Sophie followed, stopping a few feet away, sensing something profoundly different in the air. Liam turned to Anna, then knelt, not to perform, but to honor. Anna gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. He opened the box, revealing a single diamond, simple and elegantly set. But it was not the ring itself that moved her. It was what he said. "I used to think Christmas was about grand parties," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "But then you let me in. You fed me at your tiny table, you made me laugh again. You gave me the one thing I thought I'd never have, a seat beside you." He looked at Sophie now, who was bouncing in place. "You didn't know it, but you were writing the song I didn't know my life needed." He stood, took both their hands. "With you, I found home." Sophie shrieked with delight. "Say yes, Mommy! Say yes!" Tears filled Anna's eyes. She nodded, smiling through them. "Yes," she whispered. The room erupted in soft applause. Liam kissed Anna's forehead, then held her hand on one side, Sophie's on the other. Under the gentle lights of the tree, the three of them stood, a small family full of grace and joy. Outside, snow began to fall again, and inside, Liam finally understood what it meant to truly belong. Sometimes, a simple invitation, a tiny hand, or a seat at a small dinner table is all it takes to change a life forever. Liam walked into that Christmas Eve alone, but he walked out with something far greater than success or wealth. He found love, belonging, and a home in the hearts of two people who had nothing to offer but everything that truly mattered.